This is Leader Time by FedNet, a podcast for Senate observers with floor remarks from Majority Leader John Thune and Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer. On April 28th, Thune noted British royals' visit to Congress before remarks on apprenticeships and education savings under the 2025 tax bill. The following material is protected by copyright.
Mr. President, before I begin, I want to mention how pleased we are to be able to welcome King Charles and Queen Camilla to the Capitol today. The special relationship between our two nations has been a long and fruitful one. And I think it's fair to say that over the course of our nation's history, we've had no closer ally than Great Britain. We stood together in war and in peace, and together opposed the enemies of the free world. And I'm confident that we will continue to stand together for centuries to come. Mr. President, this week is National Apprenticeship Week. This week we celebrate the pathways that apprenticeships provide for many Americans to attain their American dream, to find a good-paying job and to do meaningful work. Mr. President, working in the trades or in manufacturing is indeed meaningful work. No matter how far technology advances, we're still going to need builders, doers, and makers. To my knowledge, there's no artificial intelligence that can climb an electric pole. There's no chatbot, I should say, that can fix a toilet. And there's no app that will install your home's HVAC system. Skilled jobs are in-demand jobs, and they're going to be in demand for a long time to come. And we need to invest in and support the next generation of skilled professionals. Mr. President, that's one of the things that Republicans did last year in the Working Families Tax Cut bill. That landmark piece of legislation made a significant investment in American workers, starting with investing in the education and training programs that support skilled jobs. Mr. President, for decades now, the 529 Education Savings Plan has been a powerful tool for parents to save for their kids' education. At first, 529s could only be used for college. But in 2017, Republicans expanded the eligible uses of 529 plans to include K-12 expenses as well. And in last year's Working Families Tax Cuts, Republicans expanded 529s again and gave Americans flexibility to use their savings for vocational and continuing education programs as well. On top of that, we doubled the withdrawal limit to $20,000 per year, giving Americans even greater flexibility to choose a program that suits their needs and their dreams. Mr. President, the expansion of 529s complements the creation of new Trump accounts in the Working Families Tax Cuts. Trump accounts provide parents with another option to invest in their children's future. And the money in those accounts can be used for education, to buy a first home, or to start a business when a child reaches adulthood. They're just one more way to give the next generation a head start on their American dream. And speaking of creating options and opportunity, Mr. President, beginning this summer, Americans will be able to take advantage of the new Workforce Pell Program created by the Working Families Tax Cuts. Mr. President, most people are probably familiar with the traditional Pell Grant program. Pell Grants offer need-based financial aid for students in undergraduate degree programs. And until now, they've generally been limited to students in those programs. Workforce Pell will provide financial assistance to Americans in shorter-term skills and career training programs. It will help workers pursuing skills for in-demand jobs at various stages of their careers. And it will be available to those just joining the workforce, those looking to grow and advance in their careers, and those who may be looking to switch careers, even if they've already earned a bachelor's degree. And this innovative new program will help grow the workforce for a number of important jobs. Careers in healthcare, like phlebotomy and paramedicine, truck driving, childcare, welding, and numerous other skilled professions that provide pathways to success. Mr. President, in addition to supporting the education needed for more Americans to pursue careers in the trades and in manufacturing, the Working Families Tax Cuts also supports their success once they're in those jobs. The pro-worker and pro-growth tax policy in the bill allows American workers to keep more of their hard-earned money and supports the small business growth, job growth, and entrepreneurship that mean more opportunities for Americans to get ahead. The Working Families Tax Cuts made lower tax rates permanent, which means bigger paychecks and bigger refunds for hardworking Americans. And then there's no tax on overtime, which allows workers to keep more of the money they earn when they spend extra hours on the job. It's not uncommon for workers in manufacturing and the trades to put in more than 40 hours a week. So no tax on overtime is going to deliver significant tax savings to many of these Americans. And then there are the pro-growth tax policies in this bill, like permanently lower tax rates for small businesses. The 199A small business deduction is also now a permanent feature of America's tax code and allows small businesses, farms, and ranches to reduce their tax burden and invest more in their operations and in their employees. And then there's full expensing for new equipment, which is now permanent thanks to this bill, and supports businesses upgrading and replacing machinery and other equipment that's essential to their work. This landmark bill also allows for full expensing of new factories and factory improvements. And we've seen a number of manufacturing investments being made across the United States since this bill passed last year. Mr. President, one of the pillars of the working families tax cuts is providing Americans with more opportunities to get ahead. And everything I've mentioned this morning is about cultivating opportunity, whether it's investing in education, supporting good-paying jobs, encouraging entrepreneurship, and promoting an economic environment where businesses can grow and create those good-paying jobs. Mr. President, that's what the working families tax cuts is all about. And this story is only just beginning to be written.
Schumer touched on the Iran war, White House ballroom construction, Cuba, and more.
Mr. President, as our nation wages Donald Trump's reckless war with a dangerous and erratic enemy, and as the Department of Homeland Security is still not funded because of the hijinks within the president's own party, Donald Trump has decided to focus on a taxpayer-funded, gold-plated ballroom instead of focusing on these important national security issues. The war in Iran, dangerous for the U.S. The fact that we haven't funded Homeland Security, dangerous for the U.S. Does Donald Trump roll up his sleeves and say, let's solve these problems? No. He's focused on this ballroom, this gilded, gold-plated, taxpayer-funded ballroom, instead of focusing on the important national security issues facing the country. Trump's values are perverse, just perverse. If the President and House Republicans truly care about our national security, fund DHS, fund the Secret Service, fund CISA, fund the Coast Guard, fund all the crucial law-abiding agencies that every Democrat and every Republican in the Senate unanimously voted to fund. Not once, but twice. Now, House Republicans say they're tinkering with technical changes to our legislation. Speaker Johnson, our bill, our bipartisan bill, doesn't need any changes. Just pass the damn thing. Pass the damn thing. We desperately need it. Democrats chose to fund national security and keep Americans safe. For 32 days, House Republicans have blocked funding for DHS. Donald Trump and Republicans' fixation on the ballroom just shows how out of touch, how very out of touch they are. And let's not forget, last year, Carolyn Leavitt said Trump's gilded ballroom, quote, is not going to cost the taxpayers a dime. Well, rewind. Instead, the ballroom is going to cost the taxpayers a pretty penny to the tune of $400 million. Let me repeat, $400 million for Trump's walled palace. That's how much his acolyte, Senator Graham, wants to authorize for the project in this new bill. He's also floated potentially forcing through ballroom funding with Republicans' partisan reconciliation process. Rush it through without debate, without amendment, $400 million for a ballroom? Seriously? Apparently, Donald Trump wasn't satisfied with forcing Americans to foot the bill for a war they do not want and $1 trillion in tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires that Americans eschew. Absolute absurdity. What happened to funding the ballroom with tens of millions of dollars in shady donations Trump received from billionaires and corporations, or with the billions his family has made off the presidency. What happened to that? Ignoble as that was. Instead of spending $400 million to build a walled palace for Donald Trump, Republicans should use that money to lower housing, food, gas, and health care costs for the American people. I'm putting out a framework today on how to bring down health care costs. Republicans ought to follow it, helping the American people for once. Unfortunately, holding up DHS funding isn't the only way Republican infighting is threatening America's national security. Speaker Johnson, Donald Trump, and national Republicans, America's national security is at stake. Get your act together on FISA. America cannot afford for you to continue dithering on FISA. Get your act together, Speaker Johnson. Run the House of Representatives like it should be run, dealing with the problems America faces. Now on Cuba. Since launching his disastrous war with Iran, Donald Trump has said, quote, Cuba is going to be next, and that we may stop by Cuba after we're finished. The last thing working Americans need right now is another war, let alone one that's 90 miles south of the United States. Republicans must get out in front of a looming catastrophe in Cuba before it gets even worse, as they should have done with Trump's war in Iran. Today, Senate Democrats will advance a war powers resolution to give Republicans an opportunity to stop a looming catastrophe in Cuba. Republicans, do Trump a favor, support our war powers resolution so he doesn't get messed up in another foreign adventure that hurts America. And on King Charles, today's a great honor for both the House and Senate to welcome His Majesty King Charles III to address a joint meeting of Congress. It has been 35 years since a British monarch addressed the elected representatives of the American people. In that time, the world has changed dramatically, but in many ways, the same tests remain before us. Conflict still grips regions across the globe. Russia grows more aggressive. The Middle East remains unstable, and the future of the transatlantic alliance hangs in the balance. Today, the visit of King Charles III should serve as a reminder to the President of the United States and to every elected official in this country, friends and allies matter. And most of all, for the security of Europe, NATO matters. I encourage His Majesty to impress upon the President the absolute importance of NATO. I hope he's able to get Trump to listen and understand the stakes. NATO must endure. It must stay strong. Our national security depends on it. The security of much of the world depends on it. To walk away from NATO would be a terrible mistake that will reverberate for generations and make Americans far less safe. Trump must listen and understand the stakes.
This program is copyrighted by Federal Network, Incorporated, and provided only for informational and educational purposes. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without express written permission from FedNet is prohibited. Thanks for listening to this FedNet podcast.